There's a moment in every Star Wars fan's life when they realize something feels off. You rewatch The Rise of Skywalker, hoping maybe this time it won't feel like a cinematic panic attack. But then boom, Palpatine's back. Poe's suddenly Indiana Jones, and Rey is doing backflips through narrative loopholes, like she's auditioning for a logic-defying circus act. It's not just confusing, it's aggressively incoherent. You start picking up on little things, like how every emotional beat from the last movie got either ignored or bulldozed. It's like they made a checklist of everything fans debated online and decided to address all of it in one scene, twice while screaming. And don't get me wrong, I love Star Wars chaos, but this isn't the fun kind. This is the I forgot to save my group project kind. The lightspeed skipping alone is enough to give a physics professor a migraine. It's cool for 5 seconds, and then you realize they're just flying through planets like the laws of space don't apply anymore. Then we've got the Sith dagger that somehow points to wreckage on a moon that's been sitting perfectly still for decades. It's like national treasure, but if the map was written by someone who failed geometry. Somehow this film managed to make a galaxy filled with Force ghosts, zombie clones, secret fleets, and desert raves feel small and meaningless. It threw spectacle at us like a distraction, hoping we wouldn't notice the gaping plot holes hiding behind the lens flares and John Williams' greatest hits. There's no room to feel anything. It's just event after event after event, with no time to care, and what makes it all sting more is that you can see the potential buried underneath. There are moments that almost land, characters who almost matter, ideas that could have worked if they'd just slowed down for half a second. But instead of finishing a story, they hit the reset button mid-sentence and called it closure. That's not an ending. That's a corporate shrug wrapped in blue lightning. In this video, we're unpacking every narrative mess and emotional misfire that made The Rise of Skywalker the most baffling conclusion in Star Wars history. We'll break down the retcons, the contradictions, and the heartbreaking waste of characters who deserved so much more. This isn't just a review, it's a reckoning. Because somehow, it's even worse than you remember. Let's rewind for a second. Remember walking into that theater in 2019, thinking, okay, maybe this won't be great, but at least it'll make sense. And then the opening crawl literally says, somehow, Palpatine returned. With zero setup, zero warning. Just, boom. Space Zombie Grandpa is back, and we're all supposed to nod and go with it. That's not a plot twist. That's narrative whiplash. The Rise of Skywalker feels like it was written by someone skimming a Wikipedia page, mid-sprint. There are lightspeed skips, dagger compasses, and memory-erasing droids, all shoved in like Star Wars Mad Libs. And it's not just what they included, it's what they ignored. Every emotional thread from The Last Jedi gets cut like someone yanking the plug mid-download. Rey's heritage, Kylo's redemption, Finn's Force sensitivity, all tossed into hyperspace with barely a second thought. The movie doesn't build on what came before. It panics and hits reset like a kid rage-quitting a video game. And the result is a film that feels like 3 movies duct-taped together by someone who stopped caring halfway through. What's wild is how confidently it moves forward, like it's hoping we won't notice the gaps if everything's loud and glowing. 1 second we're on a moon with Death Star ruins. The next we're in a Sith Colosseum surrounded by hooded concertgoers chanting for blood. It's a lot, and none of it really connects. So yeah, if you thought Rise of Skywalker was just a bit messy, it's way worse than that. And if you're willing to look closer, the real chaos starts to come into focus. Let's talk about retcons, because this movie isn't just guilty of rewriting its own trilogy. It actively fights the last 2 films like it's in a passive-aggressive sibling rivalry. Remember how The Last Jedi told us anyone could be a Jedi? How Rey was powerful because of her choices, not her bloodline. Yeah, forget all that. Now she's Palpatine's granddaughter, because apparently midichlorians are hereditary again. It's like they looked at every bold idea in Episode 8 and went, nope, delete, backspace, and then scribbled something safe in crayon. Luke went from burned-out exile to motivational ghost. Snoke turned out to be a jar of clones on a meat hook. And somehow the First Order became the Final Order because, new name I guess. Even Finn's arc gets demolished. He spends 2 movies becoming more than just a number. Finally, about to reveal he's Force sensitive, only for the movie to drop that thread entirely. He keeps saying he has something to tell Rey, but never tells her, not even once. How do you tease something that important, and then just forget it happened? And then there's Rose Tico, who gets benched completely. Shoved into the background like she was late to the casting call, after all the hate she got from online trolls. This movie basically said, yeah, we agree. And that kind of creative cowardice just makes everything worse. The saddest part is that this movie had potential. There were moments, glimpses, where you could feel something real struggling to break through. Leia's presence could have been powerful, but with Carrie Fisher gone, the recycled footage felt ghostly and disconnected. Every scene with her feels like emotional patchwork, stitched together from leftovers. And Ben Solo, man, what a missed opportunity. Adam Driver gave one of the best performances in the trilogy. Raw, conflicted, layered. And this movie gives him about 5 lines after he turns back to the light. No final words, no reunion. Just a smile and a death scene that plays like an afterthought. The bond between Rey and Ben had so much emotional weight, and instead of letting it breathe, they slammed it into a rushed kiss and then pulled the plug. It didn't feel earned. It felt like the movie panicked and said, quick, give them something dramatic before we run out of runtime. Even Chewbacca's fake-out death felt cruel. They let us think he was gone for about 90 seconds and then walked it back like it was no big deal. That's not emotional stakes. That's manipulation. Cheap and hollow and undeserved. What hurts the most is that we wanted this to work. We wanted closure, meaning a send-off that honored the saga. But what we got was noise, distraction, and silence where heart should have been. But here's the crazy part. It still looked incredible. Say what you want about the story, but visually, this movie threw everything at the screen and then some. The lightsaber duels, the Star Destroyer fleet rising from Exegol, even Rey standing defiant against lightning from the sky. It all looked like Star Wars. John Williams was out here composing like it was his final symphony, blending old themes with new ones in a way that almost convinced you something epic was happening. The music told a better story than the script did, and somehow carried moments that would have otherwise collapsed under their own nonsense. The sound design, the cinematography, the creature work, all top tier. Say what you will about the writing. But the people behind the camera clearly gave everything they had. And sometimes that tricked you into thinking the scene meant something, because it felt so big. There's even something awe-inspiring about how confidently chaotic it all is. The movie throws lore and lightning around like it's trying to start a force storm just to wake the audience up. It's messy, overstuffed, and kind of spectacular in how much it tries to cram into 2 hours. It's a beautiful disaster. A high-budget fever dream that dazzles you just long enough to distract you from how empty it all is. But maybe there's something to be said about what came after. Because out of the wreckage of this movie came a fan base that started looking deeper, questioning more, and realizing that maybe the future of Star Wars didn't have to live in the shadow of legacy characters anymore. We saw new stories take shape. Shows like Andor and The Mandalorian began exploring different corners of the galaxy. Without needing a Skywalker to show up every 10 minutes, there was room for smaller moments, character studies, ideas that weren't afraid to slow down and breathe. Rey's arc, as broken as it felt here, still left the door open for something better. She buried the sabers. She looked out at the twin suns, and for 1 second, it felt like the story could finally move forward. There's something poetic about that image, even if the road to it was bumpy and broken. Even the criticisms themselves sparked more creativity. Fans re-editing scenes, rewriting arcs, exploring what could have been. Sometimes the backlash creates a space where something more authentic can grow, because people care enough to imagine something better. So, yeah, The Rise of Skywalker stumbled hard, but it didn't kill Star Wars. If anything, it reminded everyone why Star Wars needs to evolve. In the end, The Rise of Skywalker didn't just wrap up a trilogy, it tried to end a saga. And in doing so, it collapsed under the weight of its own legacy. It wanted to honor the past, fix the present, and tease the future. But ended up satisfying none of them. It wasn't just a messy movie, it was a missed opportunity. To say something bold, to take risks, to tell a story with heart instead of just speed. It was afraid to commit, afraid to challenge, afraid to trust the audience with something new. The tragedy isn't just what it got wrong, it's how much it left behind. Characters with potential, arcs with meaning, threads that could have tied together into something unforgettable. Instead, they were cut off, buried, or rushed to a hollow end. But maybe that's the lesson here, that even the biggest franchises can stumble, that even billion-dollar stories can lose their way, and maybe that opens the door for something better, something more personal, something that doesn't just rely on nostalgia to carry the weight. Because Star Wars isn't just about lightsabers and bloodlines, it's about people, choices, and change. And maybe the best way to honor the saga is to tell new stories it never dared to before. Thank you for watching the whole video. I make videos because of my love for Star Wars and Marvel. I've been asked countless times how I get my subtitles, and I generate them automatically with a tool I built. That same tool can be used here on my website. It's completely free and doesn't require signing up. My website contains the subtitle generator that is perfect for any video, blogging post, where you can sign up with your email and receive notifications for when I post, and also my 3 channels. Critical Analysis Hub focuses on Star Wars and Marvel movies. Critical Analysis Hub Plus looks at Star Wars and Marvel shows. and Critical Analysis Hub XP centers on video games like The Last of Us series, Jedi Survivor, and GTA 5. Thank you for being a fan.